So today we're making naturally leavened sourdough bread. First thing we're going to do is we're going to ovalize the dough, which just means we're going to hydrate it. That makes a better structure for our flour, or for our bread, sorry, better crumb. So normally I would use bread flour, but I don't have bread flour. I have regular all-purpose flour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of this vital wheat gluten from Anthony's. You can find it on Amazon. And you just mix it with all-purpose flour, and it creates bread flour. It adds protein to your all-purpose flour so that you get the right. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Turn it off. You get the right gluten and a better rise with your dough. I have some tiny helpers here. Excuse them if they get annoying. So I've set my scale to 0 in order to make, in order to make the correct 4% ratio for bread flour. For every 12 ounces, for every 124 grams of all-purpose flour, I add 5 grams of vital wheat gluten. So to scale that up, because we need 766 grams of flour in this recipe, excuse me, love, no thank you. I'm going to add 735 grams of all-purpose flour. Here, keep it right there, honey. Almost there. $735 grams of all-purpose flour. And we follow that. Excuse me, love. And we follow that with 30 grams of vital wheat gluten until we get to 766 grams. As close as you can. You don't have to be crazy precise. Thank you, honey. What I usually do is I just also take my whisk and mix it around. Okay, so we're going to zero out our scale and we're going to add our water. I'm going to add 613 grams of water. I'm just going to get it straight from the fridge. You don't have to do anything fancy. You can get it from the sink if that works better for you. But I'm just going to fill a mason jar and pour. Right. 613. I know you can't see, honey. I'm making the video so others can see.
The bread's almost ready. I smell things to make it.
Good.
I need a little bit of help for that bread.
You think so?
Yep. So I'm going to help you.
Okay, I'll let you know. 614, that's okay. Just get as close as you can. It's pretty close. So, we have our flour and our water, and the next step is to take a spatula and mix it all together. You're going to kind of get like a roughish paste. Kind of like, woo! See? Oh, my flour came everywhere. Kind of like a shaggy dough. And you don't really have to worry about going too crazy with it, because it's not going to completely come together. You're just mixing it enough so that there's no like dry patches. So if you kind of flip it over, there's some stuck to the bottom. That's cool. We'll get it later. Let's flip it on this side. No crazy dry patches. Okay. So you can kind of see it's already starting to hydrate because it's coming together. still a little bit shaggy, but that's fine. Alright. And then we just let this wait for about an hour. I like to autolyze it for an hour. You can do half an hour, but I like the results I get from when I autolyze it for an hour. So we're just going to let this sit. I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap, and then we'll come back and add the starter. An hour, and I have a helper with me. Lie my scale underneath because we're going to do some more weighing of stuff. Let's take a look at our dough. Have it up right there. Great. Okay, so our dough, our flour and water, they've autolyzed, which means the dough or the flour has hydrated a little bit. It means it's soaked up the water, right, like a sponge. It's not going to make it easier for us to add our starter. So here's our starter. I fed it yesterday and it bubbled up, and just now, and when I poured it into this container, it kind of, you know, I degassed it. But you can still see there's a little bit of bubbles in there. This is a whole wheat starter. I just like the flavor. I also know that the whole wheat flour, which is what we use in this starter, has more nutrients in it and more like good bacteria. So it gives the yeast more to eat and gives the bread a nuttier flavor. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on our scale, and if I can find the on button, there we go. So we've already added our flour and our water to the bowl. Next we're going to add our starter and our salt. We're going to add 115 grams of starter. Ooh, and with my other children who is strapped to me is trying to get free. I'm going to pour this in. Hang tight. Okay, we're back. It's been an hour. Our flour has autolyzed, which means soaked up all that water that we put in. And the next step is to add our salt and add our starter. So, according to the recipe, I'm going to add 115-ish grams of our whole wheat starter. I use whole wheat because it has more beneficial bacteria, and it also has a nuttier taste in the finished product. This is starter that I fed yesterday, and you can see a little bit of the bubbles. They're still there. I transferred, it used to be a lot bubblier, but I transferred it into this container, so I kind of degassed it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our 115 grams. Take a 15 grams of salt. Next. Take that scoop. I'm going to zero out our scale again. Or 2. Or 3. There we go. There's 15. Alright, thank you. So now the next fun part is mixing it all together. We're just combining the starter and the autolyzed flour and the salt together. And we're going to just mix it up. Doesn't have to be completely mixed, just enough so that it's kind of integrated together. Alright, thank you for your help. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my hands nice and clean. We just scrubbed them really well, so all of our hands are clean. I'm going to just grab a bunch and pull it over.
Me?
Yeah, you can do it too. So I call this the pinwheel fold, just because I envision moving it to like the center of the pinwheel, to the wings of the pinwheel when I'm doing it.
So like there's the pinwheel. You fold it down, 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 down.
That's what I envision when I do this. People call it the stretch and fold, but I call it pinwheel. And It's just a light way of folding your dough so that you're not degassing it too much. I'm going to do one more fold, and then you can grab a handful, okay?
No.
You don't want to? Okay, that's fine. That's your choice.
But what can I help with getting a rag?
I'm saying I'm just going to wash my hands when I'm all done with it. But maybe we'll use a rag later.
No, I'm not saying a rag for your hand. I'm saying a rag. Every time I see you make sourdough bread,
What do I do with the rag?
you put the dough on the rag.
We will do that with this loaf too, but we're not quite at that step yet. Good thinking. You've watched me do this so many times that you already know what's next coming. Okay, so I've been mixing it as we've been chatting.
Marshall's trying to get out of the
He surely is. I'm so glad Daddy's right here to rescue him. Okay, so as you can see that I've been kind of mixing it together, it's starting to kind of elasticate. Is that the right word? I'm not sure what the correct verbiage is for sourdough, but it's getting stretchy. I'm calling that getting stretchy. The starter isn't completely mixed in because you'll see pockets of where I had folded the autolyzed dough over. Yep.
Not a hole, but
There is a big hole right here, and that's all right. Because we're kind of creating like different layers, and that's just lightly mixing things together. And then we'll keep going, making these folds every 30 minutes to an hour. And it's kind of warm in our house right now because it's the middle of summer. So we're gonna cover this with some plastic wrap and let it sit for probably about half an hour and come back and check on it and see if it's ready for more folds. Alright, so it's been an hour. Probably could have done this at half an hour, but I'm going to do a full hour. You can see the dough is kind of poofy, not too creepy. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another pinwheel turn, just a clean hand. Grab a hunk, give it a stretch, pull it to the center. Grab a hunk, give it a stretch, pull it to the center. Just go all the way around. That's it. We're going to wait another half hour to an hour. Cover. I folded this about 4 times, and I can see, it smells amazing. I can see that there's already like little air pockets forming. There was one when I was folding last time, but there's one there now. And there's a couple over here too, they're smaller. The next step is to pour this onto a, either a like silicone baking mat or a wooden cutting board with flour, because we're going to be doing some folding on that in order to do the pre-shape and then the final shaping. So next to my bowl here, I have the silicone baking mat. It's used for like pies and cakes and stuff, but it doesn't really matter, whatever you have. It's right off the side. I think we'll put a little bit of flour on here just to make sure it doesn't stick. You can also use water. Sometimes, depending on the humidity, I have a spray bottle that I keep some water for bread in, and if it's a really dry day, I'll just use the board with water. But it's kind of humid today, so I think I'm going to use flour, just a light dusting. And then dough. And it's a little sticky, that's fine. It's helpful if you have a bench scraper or any kind of other like dough scraper. Just using my fingers here. Okay, now use what you have. Alright, I'm going to do one more fold and fold. And you don't want to do too much, because otherwise then you'll degas it, and all those bubbles that you've worked so hard to fold into this will go away and it's like kind of dense loaf. It's a light dusting because we don't want to put too much flour, incorporate too much flour into this. So I have this set. I think it's kind of bouncy. Looking good. And we'll just cover this with a cloth and let it sit for another half hour, 45 minutes. So we shaped our dough. I put a towel over it, and I just took it off right now. What we're going to do is we're going to shape this, and then we're going to put it in our Bannton. I like to put a cloth on the Bannton because I know for sure it won't stick to these little rings. I had a poor experience a while ago that kind of traumatized me. Please don't stick your fingers in the dough, love. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to really flour my Bannton. And then I'm going to put some more flour on our workspace, and then we're going to shape the dough. Got it. Okay. So I have our Bannton, and I have a cup of flour. I just took a scoop of it, doesn't really matter. I'm just going to pour it right in here. It looks like a lot, and that's what you need. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take your hand, and just kind of press it into the sides. You can totally use a tea towel for this.
What are you telling me?
I'm telling Grandma. You can tell, you can use a tea towel. Whatever you have is fine. And then I just like to make sure I work it up the sides so that it really, really is all covered. Because when you put your sourdough in the fridge to prove or to like do your long ferment, sometimes it'll suck up the extra flour and it'll kind of stick to the cloth. Happened a couple times. So usually, thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. Thank you. So this is what I do. I'm going to pour the extra flour out, and actually, maybe, let me see this. Look at that. Let's put quite a bit extra. Always better to have more than to need some extra.
One bin, two bins.
You do have 2 bins. Okay, so here's my floured, covered Bannton. I poured out most of the extra. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave this here. A little bit closer, I guess. You can kind of see how much flour I put on it. Here. Thank you. Please put it back in the bin. Okay, so I set that off to the side. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shape my dough. And I'm going to do this really carefully. Let me grab my bench scraper. Bench scraper is what I like to do because what I have that handle and just kind of scoop it and just kind of free it. And I'm just going to be really light handling this because I don't want to let all of those nice air bubbles, you can kind of see they're starting to pop already. I don't want to let all those nice air bubbles out. Anywho, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to get fancy with my flour throwing, but I like to practice every now and then. Just make sure you have a pretty well floured surface. And I'm going to flip this guy over. Ooh, yeah, look at that. So, I'm going to need a stool, nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my folds, and then we're going to do the final shape. And then we're going to put it in the Bannton. So, I have my stretch. This is how I do my first form. Let me turn on some water from my tile. Do this, and then I fold from the other side. Again, pretty gently. I don't want to let all that nice air out. And then from my sides, and fold it up like this. And I like to hold it because sometimes it will like come back. You saw what happened there. And then I'm going to take this side. You can see. That's right.
I'll put the lid back on.
And so I'm still kind of getting used to how to fold this, but I hear what you're supposed to do is you're kind of supposed to put like this part of your hand down on the mat, and both of us actually, kind of make like a wall, and then do a fold towards you, and that makes the skin nice and taut. I have not perfected this. So how you can kind of do that.
Any more flour?
Thank you, love. So that helps. I don't know. But it's fun to practice. Every loaf is a new experience.
Every loaf is a different shape, different size.
That's right, Lovey. And we just do our best.
Yes.
Yes. And no matter what it looks like, it's always delicious.
Yes.
Okay. So I have, what was that? Yeah, this one's going to be for us. So I have my loaf. Looks really nice. I'm going to flip it into my Bannton really fast. There's no real like no real easy way to do it. I like to flour my hands and make sure there's some extra. Hello, I'm doing a video. Excuse me. And I flip it. I'm going to flip into the Bannton. 1, 2, 3. So you can see how it's kind of settling. I folded it, or I did that pulling to kind of shape it, but it didn't really stay. And what's going to end up happening, because I did it this way with the folding method, I'm going to get these tighter areas of, excuse me, Lovey, I will be with you in a moment. So the way, when I shaped it, you can kind of see, it's all those folds. I'm going to get these like air pockets, and then some parts will have this kind of tight weave kind of situation going on. Tighter crumb, that's what I was trying to find the words for. It's alright, it's still going to taste great. There's just going to be some variation with this loaf when I do each slice. And that's not a problem with me. It's fine, it's going to taste great. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the fridge. Actually, I'm going to put a little bit more flour just in case it sticks. I have my towel, and this is going to go sit in the fridge for at least 8 hours. I can go longer if I forget to bake it tomorrow. Not a problem. It's just going to allow the sourdough flavor to really get more tang, have like a heavier sourdough flavor. Into the fridge it goes. I'll see you tomorrow. Alright, so it's the next day. I just pulled our bread out of the refrigerator, and you can see it's risen a little bit from yesterday. I'm not going to tilt it, but you can see it's kind of puffier. It's the caves aren't as deep. That's a good sign. We know that it's fermented. So the next step is to put this in the oven. There's a, I usually cook it in a cast iron, one of those like covered Dutch ovens. To prevent it from sticking to the bottom and just like ease of getting it actually into the container, I put the dough onto parchment paper. So here's a couple other things I have. It's using Costco parchment paper. Doesn't matter the brand. It's just what I have. Whatever you have will be fine. I choose to tear off about a square's worth because that's how much I like. From experience, I know how this much will fit into the covered Dutch oven, and I'll be able to pour this onto here. I also have a baking sheet that has seen better days. I don't worry about it getting up to the crazy high temperatures of the 550-degree oven. What I do is I put this, I put the baking sheet underneath the covered Dutch oven because it helps to insulate the bottom of the baker so that the bottom of your dough doesn't burn, because we're cooking at such a high temperature. The bottom has a greater chance of getting burnt since it's like touching the bottom of the actual pan. So this putting the baking sheet underneath your covered baker while you bake the bread provides that extra level of insulation so that it's less likely to burn. It does double duty because what I do is when it comes time to actually flip out my dough, what I do is I invert this over the Bannton and then just do like a nice easy flip. That way I don't have to worry about the dough spreading anywhere. So I can actually go ahead and take care of that right now. Also, just as an FYI, you want to preheat your baker. You want to preheat your baker in the oven before you put your dough in. So I've had my cast iron Dutch oven preheating in the oven at 550 degrees for probably an hour and a half. It's been a little much. It's really hot in our house. Husband's not impressed. Anyways, so I know that it's super hot, and you want to make sure, you want to make sure that your covered Dutch oven or whatever you're baking in is preheated, because it's going to basically create a like a professional baker of like a baking oven. So I've covered my Bannton with my parchment paper. Now I'm going to put the baking sheet on top of that. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to do it this way. And I have one hand down here. I'm going to put the other hand on the bottom down here, and I'm just going to go. Sound effects always make things better. And then you very gently, because you never really know what's going to happen when you first pull this out. It could stick, it might not stick. Depends on your luck. Depends on how much you've actually floured your Bannton. Seems to be coming out pretty well today. Just rock it back and forth really slowly, so if there are any places that do stick, you're not ripping off a hunk of dough. Look at that beauty. Alright, so here is our dough. So the next thing that I like to do, it's really, again, personal preference, but I choose to dust off any of the extra flour with, I just use a pastry brush. If there was a whole lot of extra flour on here, I would dust it off. It's not going to burn because you're in the covered baker, so you should be fine if there is some extra flour. Next part is to use your lame. So this is a fancy one. My husband got it for me on Amazon, I believe. You don't need the fancy one. I feel like I get better cuts when I use it, but really what you need is a really sharp knife or a can you get that up there? Just a straight edge. It's called a razor, a straight razor blade. Regardless, If you have a sharp knife, this should be fine. Or that should be fine. If you have a straight razor blade, that should be fine as well. And if you have a lame, great. So when you're scoring the sourdough, you want to make a deep score so that your bread has you're basically making a vent for all of the moisture when it's baking to escape out of a controlled area. Otherwise, if you don't make, if you make a shallow score, then your bread might actually like split on its own in an irregular fashion. Again, it's not going to change the taste or the texture or anything. It makes for a prettier loaf. Anyways, so what I'm going to do is I like to do my scores this way. And you can kind of see the angle that I'm holding the lame at. And so once I've scored it initially, I go back through and go a little bit deeper so that again I get that control of where my loaf is going to release its moisture from. So the next part is decorative. What I've done in the past is I've done little like tick marks around. I'm not sure what I'm going to do today. We'll see. Kaboom. Hopefully our loaf doesn't go kaboom. So I'm kind of doing like a wheat pattern. I don't know, just winging it. I saw someone the other day make a flower. It was like absolutely stunning. Anywho, just kind of do your own thing. So that's my loaf. Sorry, camera. It's gonna look like. We're gonna pop it in the oven. Alright, so my oven has been preheating at 550 degrees for like more than an hour. It's a little too much. It doesn't need to go that long, but it's all good. I'm gonna open this up. I'm gonna make sure I have some hot pads here. Nope, where are my pans? This is the part where you have to work really fast, or at least faster than usual, because you don't want to let all that heat escape from the covered baker that you've been preheating. Here we go. First step is to pull out this guy from the oven. I'm just going to set it on top. I'm going to uncover it. I have my dough behind me here, the one I just scored, and I'm going to plop it right in the pan. I like to kind of straighten out the parchment, and then otherwise it kind of bakes into the sides. Doesn't really matter. So that's what that looks like. I'm going to put the cover back on so it can start cooking. Next, put your insulation down. Put your cast iron right on top of that. And here it goes. So you bake, I like to bake this since it's a larger loaf. I like to bake it for about half an hour before I like take the cover off. So I like to leave the cover on for about half an hour. And then I'll check to see what the color of the top looks like, because the color on the top is going to give you a pretty good estimation of whether or not it's done. If it's like a golden color, then the inside's probably baked enough. If it's a more like light tan color than like a sandy color, tan varies in color, whatever. But if it's a light color, kind of like this, then you know it needs to stay in longer. We'll take a look at about half an hour and see where it's at. We've been cooking for half an hour at 550. We're going to check to see what color we're at. Woo! Look at that. It looks pretty good. I think the color open along where I scored. I'm going to put this in uncovered for a few more minutes just to brown this side up. I think probably 10 more minutes should do it. Again, uncovered. It's crazy hot, so I'm going to put it in my children's hands. We'll check back in about 10 minutes and see what color we're at. Alright, well, I accidentally left it in a little bit long because that's what happens when you are baking around children. So it's a little toasty, but it will taste fine. So 10 minutes was a bit, actually it turned into more like 15 minutes. So 15 minutes was a bit too long for this. 10 minutes probably would have been just great. But anyways, what I can do is I can just trim all the extra parts off. It'll be fine once I slice into it. So I'm going to put this on a cooling rack. And let's see. Yes, you did get it. Thank you. Put that right here. I don't need my mitts for this. So this is what I normally do. I normally pick it up from the edges of the parchment. Kind of find the center and balance it. Run it right over here.
I didn't have a chance to see all of that.
I'm going to put this back in the oven actually. Of course, you know, turn off your oven. And here's the bread. Let's see if I can show you a little bit on the side. Isn't it ironic that I put that cookie sheet on the bottom so that the bottom wouldn't burn and then the top burns? Ooh, so it's hot. See, look at the bottom. It looks really nice. It has a nice color. It didn't get burnt at all. It's just the top's a little bit toasty. Throw it away in a minute. So, there's our beautiful sourdough naturally leavened bread. And we'll give it a slice once it's completely come to room temperature. It's completely cooled down. Then we'll take a look and see what the inside crumb looks like. I don't know if you can hear this, but our dough is doing something really special. It's called singing. And that's how you can tell that it has finished cooking. It has this crackling sound. It happens just a few minutes after you take it out of the oven, and that's how you know that it's all set and you're going to have a good loaf. Alright, it's been about 5 hours since it came out of the oven. It feels cool. We're going to slice it open. Remember what I was talking about with those folds and how we were going to get some irregularities? So here's that big pocket that we got, and you can kind of see how that lines up with the slice they made in it, so that you could, like, the air could escape while it was cooking. Okay, the rest of the crumb looks pretty even though, not super bad. You can kind of see how I was folding it right there, because the bubbles kind of align themselves on that fold. The flavor is really nice too. It's a subtle sourdough flavor. I just finished cutting this all the way down. So I actually like to slice my loaves in half because they're on the larger side. And then freeze one, and then just pop the other in a baggie. And I put it in the fridge because it's warm in our house. I don't want it to go bad by the time we eat it. But yeah. this is the finished product. And you can kind of see the whole, I can stick my whole finger in this one. It goes pretty far, it's almost the length of my finger. Look at that. Nice crumbs. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for joining me.